Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So in this class, we will discuss about the latest Digital Personal Data Protection Act. And the tomorrow test will be from the last week. 7 to 11. Yeah. Test tomorrow. So you can attempt online also. On the website, you can attempt the test online also on the Edukemy website. So in today's class, we will discuss about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. And there's a dispute going on. There's a controversy about the bill. It's impacting the Right to Information Act 2005. So anybody can tell me what's the difference between the personal data and the non-personal data? What is the difference? I'm not asking about the public, personal and the non-personal. Both are related to an individual. Non-personal data is that data through which your identity cannot be revealed. RTO के बारे में जानते हो? Road Transport Office. When you are adding any vehicle number in their app, they will show the vehicle is related to this person. Means that is not revealing your identity. That is the non-personal data. But this bill is about the Personal Data Protection Act. Means the information through which your identity is revealed, your identity is hacked by anyone. So that's a personal data. So before going into the discussion of the digital protection data and the controversy with respect to the RTI, we will see the background of the bill. कैसे ये process start हुआ and how we reached till 2023. इससे पहले क्यों government ने pass नहीं किया? What was the reason? The committee set up by the Supreme Court and the major decision which set up a line for the Data Protection Act. Okay. So the story was started in 2008. So you can write down also. The story was started in the 2008 when the UPA government was in the power. They introduced an amendment into the IT Act 2000. IT Act 2000. Okay. So आप लोगों ने सुना होगा कि there is a issue of the Cambridge Analytica, data protection issue of the Cambridge Analytica, through which the election were influenced in the USA. Data breach of Domino's. Everybody is ordering from the Domino's. You are entering your name, detail, and the address. In 2018, there is a data breach in the Domino's also. MobiKwik, Bajaj Finserv, latest the AIMS data breach. Even our beloved Prime Minister Narendra Modi account, Twitter account, was also hacked by and due to the data leak. So this is a concern about the data leaks. That's why the government start for the bill, the data protection bill. And the story was started in the 2008. The UPA government introduced an amendment in the IT Act 2000. The amendment was a general protection of sensitive data. General protection of sensitive data. This was introduced in the 2008 by the UPA government. And then in the 2011, the government was UPA government 2. They introduced a bill here in the parliament regarding the information technology policy, regarding the IT policy. And this policy was telling us about you cannot collect the data without the consent of user. Here, they introduced just like a general protection for the data. And now this said that the consent of the user is required. So the first time the consent of user was introduced into the 2011 by the UPA government too. Whenever you are using any application, even it's a Bheem, even it's a UPI Act, even it's a Flipkart, even it's Amazon, they ask some of the information from you. If you are disagreeing from those information, you cannot use the app. Means that is your consent. You want to use that app and you are providing your information to the app provider. So this was the second development in the act in the 2011 in the tenure of UPA 2. But after it, there is a major change in the 2017. Any idea about that change? It's a major change in the 2017. Puttaswamy versus Union of India. Swamy versus Union of India. Judgment related to right to privacy. The judgment related to right to privacy. The Supreme Court judgment said that the right to privacy is an integral part of right to life under the Article 21. The right to privacy is an integral part of right to life under the Article 21. And it's put an obligation on the central government and the private party who are regulating the private data. The issue of Pegasus in 2019 and 20 related to the tracking of the mobile phone of the other politicians. So this in 2017 put an obligation on the central government and the private party related to the data storage. So in 2017 itself, after the judgment in 2018, Supreme Court said the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee. And this was the question in UPSC 2018 mains about the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee. And the question was asked in the GS3 with respect to the security. Question was asked in the GS3 with respect to the security about the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee. This Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee was appointed for make a framework for digital data protection bill. Make a framework for digital data protection bill. And in 2018, this committee submit their report related to the bill. In 2018, the committee submit its report related to the bill. And the government released this bill into the public domain. In 2018 itself, the government released the information of the bill, the draft of the bill into the public domain. So you can suggest about what are the changes required in this draft. And in 2019, the first time the bill was introduced into the Rajya Sabha. In 2019, the first time the bill was introduced into the Rajya Sabha by Ministry of Electronic Meeting. The first time the bill was introduced into the Rajya Sabha in 2019 about the Digital Protection Act. But the bill was not passed and it was sent to the Joint Parliamentary Committee. The bill was not passed in the 2019 and it was sent to the Joint Parliamentary Committee to assess the bill. Joint Parliamentary Committee submit its report after 2 years in 2021. The Joint Parliamentary Committee submitted its report after 2 years in 2021, and in between, in 2022, Ministry of Electronics introduced a policy for digital regulation. This ministry introduced a policy for the digital regulation. so that they can regulate the data and make and treat this this data collection agency as an industry. So in 2022, the Ministry of Electronic and Information introduced the policy related to the digital bill, and finally in 2023, the Government of India passed the bill and it became an act after the assent of President. So this was the history of the Digital Data Protection Bill. Let's see it again. In 2008, the story was started, and the first amendment in the IT Act 2000 and the general protection of the sensitive data. In 2011, they introduced an IT policy which said that the consent of the users. In 2017, there is a major change regarding it, the Puttaswamy judgments, which recognize as a right to privacy as a fundamental right. And this was the question was asked in the 2017 prelims. Right to privacy under which article? This comes under the Article 21. This was the question asked in the UPSC. Then they established a committee, the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee, specific for the drafting the policy for the data protection, and the same question was asked in the 2018 GS3 related to the security. Then after the policy, the 2019, the government introduced the bill into the parliament, but that was sent to the Joint Parliamentary Committee, and finally the bill was passed in the 2023 after some changes. So this was the storyline, this was the history of the data protection bill in India. And this was also linked to an international event in 2016, because we are also influenced by the international event. In 2016, in European Union were passing the General Digital Protection Bill. The European Union was discussing about General Digital Protection Bill, and we are also influenced from it. So after the 2016, the process became very fast, and we passed the bill in the 2023, and the bill became act. But after the bill, there is a controversy related to the right to information. Controversy related to Right to Information Act, specifically to Section 8. Specifically to the Section 8 of the Act. Now we will discuss about the bill, what exactly given in the bill by the Government of India, because it's become a directly question in your paper. Explain the Digital Protection Act of 2023. So let's start with the first is the personal data and the non-personal data. The personal data is the data which reveal your identity, and the non-personal data is data which cannot reveal your identity even if available in the public domains. In this bill, the government identifies a two-party. Specifically, this is focusing on a two objective. The number one objective of the bill, to collect the information or the storage of the data. Storage of personal data. Storage of personal data. The second is usage of that personal data lawfully. The bill main objective is to collect or to store the personal data of the individuals and to use that individual lawfully. Means without the consent of the government or without the consent of the individual, they cannot use your data. So this is the main objectives. And the bill is about, they said the two parties are there. One is the data principal. Data principal. Second is the data fiduciary. Anybody have any idea about it? Who is the data principal here? Data principal is the user. And this is the party which is collecting your data. Data fiduciary is the party which is collecting your data. Data fiduciary is the party which is collecting your data, and the data principal, you, means the user, which is using the different kind of the app and which is storing the digital data. Now, the government said that there is obligations on the data fiduciary. The obligation on the data fiduciary means there is some of the work notified for the data fiduciary, means there are various kind of the guidelines. We will discuss about those guidelines here. There are the various kind of the guidelines related to the data principal and the data fiduciary. Even there are some of the duty related to data principal as well. Like there are the fundamental duty in the constitution. The bill also introduced that there are some of the duty related to the data principal as well. If we are not following this duty, they can charge us up to the 10,000 rupee fine. This is also the controversial part. They can charge up to the 10,000 rupee fine here. In the case of the data fiduciary, they list down the 6-7 principles related to it. We will discuss it later on. When the government introduced the bill, the idea was make the ease of living को increase करना है, to increase the ease of doing business, and the minimum disruption in the market. When we are introducing any new bill into the market, like the GST was introduced in the 2017, there was a huge disruption in the market. So the first target was the government. There should be a minimum disruption in the market when they are introducing this bill. It will increase the ease of doing business because the foreign party are investing in the country. So it should increase the ease of doing business and the ease of living for the individuals. You will feel safe. Our data is in the good hands. So it will increase the ease of living. It will increase the ease of doing business, and there should be the minimum disruption in the market. These are the about the bill. Now, this bill is based on the 7 principles. This bill is based on the 7 principles. The bill is based on the 7 principles. The first principle is the consent. Consent means without your consent, the third party, the party who is storing your data, cannot store your data. So your consent is required. The consent of the user is required here. The second principle is the storage. Storage of data for particular purpose. ऐसा नहीं है कि you are storing all the data. There should be a particular purpose if you are storing the data of the individuals. Like if there is a data for the health, you can store by the government health authority, but you cannot store all the data of that individual. So there should be a minimal storage, and that should be based on the particular purpose. Third principle, that's based on the minimal storage of the data. You will store only that data which should be required, less minimum. जितना कम requirement हो, you will store only that data. The fourth is the principle of data accuracy. Principle of data accuracy. The fourth part is the principle of data accuracy. And this is the obligation on the user. Data accuracy means you are providing a correct data. You are providing your full address, residential address, and there is no misinformation in the data. And there is no misinformation in the data. If the government find out any of the misinformation related to the records, they can charge up to the 10,000 rupee as a fine on the individuals. This is under the principle of the data accuracy. The next fifth one is the principle of storage limitation. This is also a controversial issue. Principle of storage limitation. The government is saying that we will store the data up to few years. And the years again up to 100 years, they will store the data of an individuals. But there is an argument about it. What after 100 years? There is a controversy about after the 100 years, who will tackle this data? Who will be the nominee and who will tackle this data? We are not able to retrieve this data for our grandfathers. That's also an argument related to this data. Principle 6 is accountability. Accountability. The sixth principle is the accountability. In this accountability principle, the fiduciary, principal fiduciary, will be accountable for, जो आपका data store करेगा, principal fiduciary will be accountable for the data information. Principal fiduciary will be accountable there. And the last is the principle of security. Last is the principle of security. Means in the principle of the security, there should be enough data which should not be breached by any of the organization, which will provide a secure data platform to the individuals. That comes under the principle of security. So there are the 7 principles related to this data protection bill. Means this bill is based on these 7 principles. The number 1 was the consent. Second was about the storage of your data. Third is about the minimal storage of the data. Fourth is the correctness of your data. Fifth is about the principle of storage limitation. After few years, they will store the data. Accountability, who will be accountable for your data? And the principle of the security. These are the 7 principles on which this bill is completely based. Yes. हाँ. 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 That's not on the like a name issue. If there is a issue related, like you are filing the government documents, आप अपना पैन कार्ड बना रहे हैं, तो उस केस में you cannot give your wrong name. That is specifically related to the government data storage. अगर आप कोई प्राइवेट थर्ड पार्टी ऐप पे अपना डेटा कुछ भी रखो, चिंटू मिंटू बंटू कुछ भी रखो, that's your issue, but not related to the government document. And the government is also providing a window. You can correct your data. You can correct your data. So that with the help of the individuals. कि आप अपना डेटा को करेक्ट कर सकते हो. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने एक बार लिख दिया तो वही आपका डेटा सेव हो गया. You can correct your data. You can access your data. आप डेटा को करेक्ट भी कर सकते हो, आप अपने डेटा को एक्सेस भी कर सकते हो. यू कैन ऑल्सो सी हु इज स्टोरिंग योर डेटा. तो ये तीनों एज अ यूजर फ्रेंडली गिवन कि आप ये तीनों चीजें एज अ यूजर यू कैन चेंज द डेटा ऑल्सो. बट in the case of the government documentation, the information should be provided correct. Now we discuss about the principle of the data. Now there is a one good thing about this bill. The bill is present in the parliament, is having the very simple language. There is very less term and condition except the some cases, and they're also providing a platform like a saral. They make a simple, accessible, rational, accountable by law. This is the full form of the SARL, which was provided under this bill. Simple, accessible, rational, accountable by law. Means this bill, this storage of your data is accountable under the law. If any of the third party is using your data, that should be accountable by law. Within the law, they can use your data. Within the law, they can take your permission. Without your permission, they cannot use your data. First time in the bill, if there is a question related to the women empowerment, you can write, first time in the bill, they use the word she. अभी तक इंडियन पार्लियामेंट में जितने भी बिल पेश हुए हैं, they are using the word he. Means that show the presence of the male into the parliament. First time they introduce the she, and this show the woman representation in the parliament. This shows the woman representation in the parliament. In the next case, the fifth point here, the data related to children. आज के टाइम में तो बच्चे को पैदा होते ही उसका इंस्टाग्राम अकाउंट बना देते हैं. Then what's the data related to the children? Then in the case of the data related to the children, they cannot store the data without the consent of parent. Parents के consent के बिना they cannot store the data. In the second condition, they can monitor. They cannot monitor the children. They cannot monitor for the advertisement also. Like in the some of the advertisement, where the children are performed, उस केस में भी they cannot monitor the children data. तो जो भी data children का monitor होगा with the consent of the parent also. With the consent of the parent. Even in the case of the monitoring, even in the case of the advertisement purpose, they cannot monitor the data here. So this was in the case of the children. So the first we discuss about principal, who is the data principal here. Second is about the data fiduciary, who is the data fiduciary here. This bill is based on the 7 principles. We discuss about all those principles. Then representation of the woman in the parliament. The first time the bill showed the representation of woman in the parliament. Then about the children, how the data of the children can be stored into the can be stored according to the law. Now the sixth point, there is some of the rules related to the principle, rules or the duty related to principle, and there is some of the obligation related to fiduciary. There are the rules related to the principles and the obligation related to the fiduciary. So you can write these. These are important for the examination purpose. The rights to the individuals. The bill gives some rights to the individuals. Number 1, the right to access information. The right to access information about personal data process. About the personal data process means you can check who is accessing your data. The right to access information about personal data process. Second is about the right to correction. The right to correction. Right to correction and the right to erasure. If you want your Facebook account should be deleted, तो आप delete कर सकते हैं. It's about the right to correction and the right to erasure also. This is the second point under the rights. The right to correction and erasure of data. Third is the right to grievance redressal. Right to grievance redressal. There is an authority जहां आप directly अपना grievance लेके जा सकते हो related to the breach of your data. Right to grievance redressal. The fourth one is right to nominate a person to exercise rights in case of death or incapacity. You can nominate a person like bank में nomination करते हो आप लोग in your account. The same case you can nominate a person who can access your data after your death. You can access your data after your death. These are the 4 rights given to the data principal, means the individuals. Now, the obligations. What are the obligations on these private party, the third party who are storing your data? So you can write the obligations. To provide security, to prevent personal data breach. To provide security to prevent personal data breach. To erase personal data, when it is not required. To erase personal data when it is not required. Next is to erase personal data, on withdrawal of consent. Means आपने बोला कि हमें अपना डेटा सेव नहीं करना है, so you can withdraw your data and they will remove your data from the accounts. Next is to provide the grievance redressal. Means those are the rights to these are the obligation to them. The rights to principal are the obligation on fiduciary. Means to provide the grievance redressal mechanism to the principals. To provide the grievance redressal mechanism to the principal. There should be a data auditor. Next point is there should be a data auditor and it should conduct periodically. There should be a data audit periodically. क्या आपने स्टोर किया है? It is required or not? Data auditing. There should be a continuously, periodically data auditing so that they can check what data is stored. So these are the obligations on the fiduciary. Now, जहां पे सबसे बड़ा डिबेट है, what is exempted in the bill? Exemption under the bill. This is also very important for the examination purpose. Exemption under the bill. There is a controversy related to the bill with respect to the exemptions because this is giving the power to the government. Power to government to decide the personal data. Power to government to decide personal data. Now the government will decide what is the personal data, what is the non-personal data. The first you can write, there is exemption for number 1. For notified agency, there is exemption for notified agency in the interest of security, sovereignty, and public order. There is a interest of security, sovereignty, and the public order. Now, who will decide it? The government will decide. Means the power in the hand of the executives. Full power in the hand of the executives. They will decide the security. They will decide the personal data. They will decide the other things also. Public order. Next point you can write. These all points are under exemptions. The second point is for research and statistical purpose. For research and statistical purpose. For startups. Now they are also allowing the startups. For startups and data fiduciary. For startups and data fiduciaries. Next is the to enforce legal rights and claims. To enforce legal rights and claims means now this is also under the Government of India. If they want to implement any legal rights passing through the parliament, they can store any of the information, and that will be decided by the Government of India itself. To perform judicial or regulatory function. To perform judicial or regulatory function. To prevent, detect, to prevent, detect, investigate, or prosecute offenses. To prevent, detect, investigate, or prosecute offenses. For approved merger, demerger. MERGER, merger and demerger. And the final is the to locate defaulters. To locate defaulters and their financial assets. To locate defaulters and their financial assets. To locate defaulters and their financial assets. From these exemptions, a prelims question can also be framed. They will give the 4 exemptions in the paper, and you need to be select how many are exempted under the data protection law. The similar type of the question was asked in the 2017 when the GST was introduced. Which of the following items are exempted under the GST? So the similar kind of the question can also be framed here. Now, let's come to the controversy part. Means the limitation, we can say. What is the first limitation? What is the first limitation? Personal data decided by the executive. Personal data is decided by executive. Second, diluting the RTI Act, diluting the Right to Information Act under Section 8. Diluting the Right to Information Act under Section 8, which is related to the personal data, which is related to the personal data. Yes, it will become very difficult for the RTI now. The third, there is an obligation on user also. Obligation on user also, and a fine of 10 up to 10,000 for not providing the correct information to the government. Fourth, और क्या क्या हो सकता है? वो इसमें ही आ जाएगा. एग्जीक्यूटिव्स के पास पावर. Issue related to data fiduciaries. Those who are storing the data, who will regulate these fiduciaries. These are third party organization or the third party company who are storing your data. Next, you can write number 5th, up to a limited period, they are storing the data. Up to a limited period, they are storing the data. I mean, you can access your data after some time, and that some time is the 100 years. They are storing the data up to the limited periods. So these are the 5-6 limitations of the Data Protection Acts. Now let's come to the major limitation related to the RTI Act. What are the major limitation related to the Right to Information Act? The Act introduced amendment under Right to Information Act of Section 8 related to the personal data. तो सबसे पहले तो यही जो आरटीआई के अंदर एक्ट के अंदर डेटा है, दैट इज ऑन द पेपर एंड द बिल इज अबाउट द डिजिटल डेटा एंड ऑन द आरटीआई वी आर अप्लाइंग द गवर्नमेंट डॉक्यूमेंट अंडर द पेपर, तो वो उस पर इंप्लीमेंट नहीं होगा. So Digital Protection Act will not be implemented on the RTI. But in the case, they are saying that personal data will not be disclosed. There's a ban. Their personal data related to the government official will not be disclosed. And this is the power under the information officer. If he thinks the data should go to public, then only it can release the data. Means there is a ban type condition with reference to the RTI if we want something government information related to it. So that personal data, before introducing this law, there are two conditions under which you cannot access the data. The first condition, if it is hampering the government India security. Second, if it's hampering the individual privacy, individual life. In that two condition, you cannot access the data under the RTI. But now there is a ban over the complete on the personal data. Means you cannot access the personal data. Now the power in the hand of the information officer, who will decide the data should go to public or not. And that's why the controversy, because the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna committee ने ये रिकमेंड नहीं किया था. This is not recommended by Justice B.N. Sri Krishna committee. The committee recommended the same thing. The personal data should be released in the public domain if it is not impacting the government of India's security or the India's security and sovereignty, and it's not hampering the individual life. So according to the new act, there is a ban on the personal data. Means now the power in the hand of the information officer. So this is the mainly controversial. सबसे बड़ा controversy यही है. Data protection bill should complement to the RTI. It not restrict the power of RTI. So you can write the question related to it. So this will be your homework related to the RTI questions. Write the question. Question number 1. Data protection should complement the Right to Information Act, and should not undermine and dilute Right to Information Act, and should not undermine and dilute Right to Information Act. Comment. 10 marker. Second question. Discuss the modern dilemma of balancing privacy rights and information access. Discuss the modern dilemma of balancing privacy rights and information access. How do technological advancement complicate this balance? How do technological advancement complicate this balance? And what measures can ensure equilibrium between these rights? What measures can ensure equilibrium between these rights? Explain with examples. Explain with examples. 15 marker. Also write the previous year question that was asked in the UPSC in 2018. Data security has assumed significant importance in digitized world. Significance importance in digitized world. Due to rising cyber crimes. The Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee addressed the issue. The Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee addressed the issue related to data protection. Full stop. What is your view? Are the strengths and the weakness of the report? Relating to the protection of personal data in cyberspace. Now change the B.N. Sri Krishna Committee with Data Protection Act of 2023. Change the B.N. Sri Krishna Committee with Data Protection Act 2023. If you're writing these three answers, all the dimensions of the question of the topic will be covered. Either it is related to the security, either it is related to the cyber attacks, either it is related to cyber crimes. In the data protection bill, इससे ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं पढ़ना है. You know about the history, background of the data protection. What is the amendment? What are the changes under this act? There are the 6-7 changes under the 7 principles. And the question related to the data protection. Link with the internal security, link with the cyber crimes and the cyberspace. And you can also write about some of the data and the case study and recent attacks related to the data breach. आपको ये सब इंट्रोड्यूस करना पड़ेगा because the question is asking about explain with examples. So you should write about case study, data, and the recent breach. And you will find the article related to the data protection in the upcoming weeks. अभी से start भी हो गए हैं. Please read those articles. You will find 1 or 2 view extra जो हम discuss नहीं कर पाए हैं. Maybe that the different dimensions. So please read those articles. One on a daily basis. You will find in the Hindu and the Indian Express about the dimensions of the data protection. We discuss about the security related aspect. We discuss about the limitation. We discuss about what is in the bill and the background. Now it's your homework. You will see the article, what the editor is saying more about the data protection. Okay. And tomorrow there will be test related to the 7 to 11 August. If you are not coming here, you can attempt online on the Edukemy website at 11. And please try to write the answer. You can send me on a Telegram. Last time भी आप लोगों को homework दिया था, कुछ 2-3 लोगों ने तो लिखा. Other are not writing. If you are not writing, means you are not understanding the concepts and you are not learning. जब तक लिखोगे नहीं, you can send me on the personal Telegram or the current affair group. That's your choice. करंट अफेयर ग्रुप के लिए आप ये QR कोड स्कैन कर सकते हैं. यहाँ पे आपको टेलीग्राम चैनल मिल जाएगा करंट अफेयर्स का. ओके. Yes, it is under the hand of the executive now about to decide the personal data. If there is a large security breach, they will tell in the public domain. But if it is related to the government officer, government authority, and the government data, it's in the hand of the information officer now. Hi Shivam, this grievance redressal institution will be the later on. Now the bill is coming to the parliament, it's become an act. Now let's see in the future how it will work. Okay, thank you everyone.